And we're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. So our topic today is, are your projects flexible enough to adapt to the post-COVID workplace? My name is Imran Khurshid, and I am an event manager at Project Management Institute's Sweden chapter. I have a co-moderator with me, and he is Lars Rylander. He is also a member of PMI Sweden chapter, just like I am. So we would like to welcome you today to this interactive session, which will help us learn how to work remotely and in agile ways during this post-COVID era. So this event has been organized by Favro in partnership with the PMI Sweden chapter. If you have a certification in PMP, then you can claim Professional Development Units, PDUs, after watching this webinar. We will send you the PDU code by email within the next couple of days. So, projects. While managing large projects is already challenging, it is now more so as we have moved to remote ways of working during COVID. So how do we effectively work remotely and incorporate flexibility in our work, and at the same time, meet constantly changing customer expectations? Well, to find out about all these, we have a panel of experts today. And so this is your last chance to learn about it. So we are very thankful to the panel of experts who we have today to share their insights and experiences with us. This webinar will be recorded and will be saved in the cloud by Favro. So as you can see in the list of panelists, we have got some experts, and I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm so thankful to them that they have agreed to be here today and share their insights and knowledge with us. So let me introduce them to you. We have Patric Palm, Richard Svahn, and Jon Leslie with us. So there's a lot to share about them, actually. And I really had a hard time to summarize this because these folks are really, really experts in their fields. So Patric Palm is a serial entrepreneur and tech investor. He focuses mostly on games, SaaS, AI, and deep tech. He's in fact the co-founder and CEO of Favro. Patric is a change maker who is passionate about hyper-performing teams and business agility. Then we have Jon Leslie, who is an agile coach at Cove Insights. He loves to empower teams around the globe with the fusion of agile techniques and tools. Jon uniquely combines his past 9 years of agile coaching and training experience with the date each of enterprise software product management and game development production experience. And last but not the least, we have Richard Svahn, who is a board member of PMI Sweden. He is a WOW stands for Way of Working, transformation leader at FRA in Sweden. Richard's drive is to build a sense of shared purpose, coach individuals and teams to grow by autonomy, reaching goals and delivering successful results. So I would like to welcome them and thank them all again for being here. Let me take you through the agenda for today very quickly so that you know what to expect and when to interact and how to do that. So for the first 10 minutes, we would like to present to you about PMI Sweden and how we add value, a lot of value to the members of PMI Sweden. And then for the next 30 minutes, we will have the panel discussion with these experts. During this time, you can type in your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to give you the floor to talk, provided that you are open to asking the question yourself. But please let us know what questions you have, and we will try to answer your question as soon as you can. And then we will have the demonstration of Favro for 20 minutes, and Jon will help us in understanding Favro better to see how we can really facilitate remote collaboration in a flexible way using Favro. Plus, we'll be able to learn how Favro can help teams shift from traditional project management to agile project management. Then we will see the Favro roadmap, where Patric will tell us about the upcoming capabilities of Favro. And finally, for 10 or 12 more minutes, we would like to take some more questions from the audience. That's how we do it today. So welcome once again. So let us move on, and let me show you what it means to be with PMI Sweden, what it really is, and what value do we add to professionals' lives and to project managers' lives. Okay. So you can see the PMI fact file. We have a lot of different types of certifications by PMI. So PMP happens to be the most popular one with a lot of certificate holders. So we have 6 more potential chapters, or maybe now it is 7 more, along with PMI Sweden chapter. So as a member of PMI, you get free and discounted resources on PMI's website, like digital copy of PMBOK guide, PMCD, and things like that. And also you get a lot of free access, like free access to projectmanagement.com and the resources available there. So these are what you get as a general member, like as a member of PMI. And on top of that, if you're becoming the member of PMI Sweden chapter, you get even more. So you get access to a valuable network, you get opportunity to participate in developing seminars and discount at the annual Passion for Projects Congress. So we have the Young Professionals Network, and we are the link between young professionals and their dream job. And you can find out more about it from this link here, which is on the website of PMI Sweden. We have podcasts, and we bring in guests to learn from them about project, program, and portfolio management. And this is really, really an interactive podcast that we run. We have a lot of learning articles written by experts, and you can connect them with your project activity, regardless of the size of it at your organization or in your context. We also have the recorded webinars to add member value, and you can connect with us to learn more about how to download these webinars if you want to do that, and if you have already signed up to certain webinars on our event page, you can go there, visit there later, and download the webinars. So Passion for Projects Congress, and this is Scandinavia's largest project management event. I remember meeting some fantastic people there, and I was also moderating 2 of the sessions. So it was really, really fun to see speakers, like really successful project management professionals, share their insights with the audience. We have the next Passion for Projects coming up in 2022. So I was really excited about 2021, but it has been canceled due to COVID-19. So come back to passionforprojects.org soon and learn more about it. To learn more about our chapter and the activities, you can visit pmi-se.org. So the world is working. The world of working is changing fast, and so is PMI. But how so? So there have been new products which have been added by PMI, and these are some of them. So you can check them out. These are really some good learning materials and other platforms from which you can learn about project management. And people who are not even professional project managers, they can really understand a lot about project management terms. So disciplined agile, this is something new, and this goes very well with the certifications of PMI. So in the past, it was mostly waterfall, but this has been embedded in the business area of PMI largely. You can read more about it on the website of pmi-se.org. We are very thankful to the sponsors of our chapter. And as you can see, we have Favro as a gold sponsor. We're very thankful to them. So we do a lot of events and activities with the support of our sponsors. So we highly appreciate it. And thank you very much for watching. So now, let us start the panel discussion. I think we are waiting for one of the panelists, Patric. I'm hoping that he'll be able to join soon.
There he is.
Okay. So let's actually start the discussion with the panelists. As I've already introduced, we have Patric Palm, Richard Svahn, and Jon Leslie in the panel. So we would love to hear their insights. So I would like to remind the audience that we are welcoming you to ask questions. And again, this is your last chance. So ask as many questions as you can. So please type in your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to give you a floor when you get a chance. So my first question is for Patric. How do we collaborate in real time with remote and distributed teams? Like I have seen that people have already started to shift to like home offices, like a lot of makeover offices are there, and it's interesting. The work styles, the culture, everything is changing so fast. And this is what I've experienced in organizations of different types, in project organizations, in even host organizations. So I would love to know from you, like, how can we really collaborate in real time with remote and distributed teams? Patric.
Well, the first thing is to make sure that you have a backup plan when technology fails, like it did for me right now. Everything crashed. I had to jump in on my phone. But so, firstly, can you hear me well?
We can.
All right, super, fantastic. Yes. Yeah. So, well, our first step is that you have to be. I mean, to be honest, this is actually a more of a, let's say, a serious note. In the same way as when we are, let's say, doing business in the more traveling world. We're trying to have a bit of margins, maybe not book a flight for the most important meeting where it will bring us to the meeting, 1 minute before the meeting starts. I think we kind of wired most professional business people to build a little bit of contingency into how we work. And what happened, when COVID hit and a lot of organizations that weren't used to working remote, suddenly they're working remote. There was a lot of things going basically wrong because of technical difficulties. Someone is suddenly losing their wire connection. They didn't have like the second thing to do. They're not able to do the same thing from both mobile and a computer. Just having that kind of contingency as a culture in the organization. So not every meeting always becomes a mess because someone cannot log in or something happened to someone. And where the whole let's just make be able to run things, that was I think that was kind of a bigger thing than maybe we thought for many, that just getting into that mindset. So I think especially for us who is in software, we have a tendency to overestimate let's say the computer literacy of our organizations very often, because also we have a lot of our DNA or let's say our identity in software development. So we take for granted that everyone else in the organization will be the same. But very often what happened now when everyone was remote, I said, well, that was not the case. And, we will talk more about that later. But, now when it's so important, at the same time, we're moving to a world where, let's say the iteration cycles of everything we do is becoming more live. Before, maybe you did something, big and you release it and then comes the marketing campaign and so forth. Today, everything is much more live. So it just happens faster, which means that we need to collaborate much more, between, teams. So, before, maybe that issue was, let's say, reduced to the challenge of that, well, we have these developers, sitting in Stockholm, and then we get these developers, sitting in Kiev. And oh yeah, we need to sync with each other. But if everyone's remote, or at least the world we're moving in now, we're going to talk more about here, where it seems like we're not going back to normal. We're going to be to a high extent kind of hybrid, so a high degree remote, even if we are starting to be with each other more. That means that we're still going to need to be really good at this. So kicking off that kind of question, I think the culture shift is actually a little bit bigger, and hopefully we all now have learned a lot from this period of COVID, which means that when we are moving into the future, we're actually coming into a mastery, let's say, in our organizations of how to handle that.
Thank you, Patric. That was insightful. Okay, so I would love to know some insights from Richard.
Yes, I agree a lot with Patric's conclusions. I would like to go back to your presentation, Imran, about PMI. The world, the way we work is changing fast because the world is changing fast. And COVID-19 is just something that shows us that this is true. The next thing will be something that we don't know today. But I think digital first culture will be really, really important in the future collaboration in real time with remote and distributed teams. But for sure, plan for backups, plan to meet in real life. Within PMI, in Swedish chapter, we have worked distributed for a long time, and we meet up with all volunteers once every 6 months, just to have a Swedish fika and get to know each other a little bit better over a glass of wine or a beer. But I would like to get back also to the lean agile mindset and the cultural things about this, as Patric also mentioned. It's just not about tools, but tools is also really important. And I'm thinking about being open to change, and these times we need to be really open to change and trying out new ways of working, focusing on flow, and also have a mindset of relentless improvement and build upon trust. So also, I think deciding which tools to use within an organization and how to use them is really important. Whether you use Microsoft Teams or Google Workspace, it's a good start. But if you're in tech or IT, as also Patric mentioned, I think that you need a really, really sharp and amazing planning tools such as Favro. And within PMI, we use Favro, and we have also a volunteer portal with other digital tools for webinars. We use the Google Workspace and other stuff. But we have a list of the tools, and we have guides and how and when to use them. And I think that's really important when you onboard a new team member. That's clear to them how to communicate in this kind of digital first environment within their new organization. And also to set up a great support. We have Imran and we have also Lars with us today from our IT team within PMI. I think this is crucial. So we also we have the IT team supporting all the different teams within PMI Sweden chapter, and that's really helping us to enable our remote way of working. So that's my thoughts about this.
Thank you, Richard. So yeah, I was feeling nostalgic actually when you were sharing all these things about PMI Sweden, like how we used to do things in the past and how we are doing now. Again, like connecting a little bit with Patric, like changing in, shifting in culture and the mindset related to collaboration. So now when I want to set up a meeting with somebody, I don't talk about digital fika anymore. I just say fika, and it's understood that it is digital. But again, how do you really overcome the challenges of not being able to meet face-to-face? And talking about working with PMI Sweden chapter, it has been amazing, an amazing experience so far. So talking about remote work and collaboration and learning about and from Favro. So this is a great opportunity for us to revisit how Favro is really helping us out, because right now I'm in Bangladesh, which is in Asia, and I'm working remotely with PMI Sweden. And that is possible because of IT and tools like Favro. All right, so I would like to hear from Jon Leslie. Like, how do we really collaborate in real time with remote and distributed teams. What can we learn from you, Jon?
Well, when this forced new way of working first happened a little over a year ago, I think it was a big unknown, right? I mean, Patric and I, Patric at Favro, which has been primarily remote and distributed for a long time as an organization, already knew how to do it. I had worked remote and distributed with Agile teams literally around the world, remote and distributed for a long time myself. So for us, it wasn't necessarily old hat, but it was definitely something we were used to. So I think it was surprising that the rest of the world was able to transform and adapt so quickly. They had to, there really wasn't a choice. But for the most part, it's proven to be very successful. And during a series of webinars Patric and I ran over the summer, specifically about this particular topic, I really like to think about it as a three-pronged thing, as we've already kind of mentioned. It's, it's the culture, it's the process, and it's the tools. And so from a culture standpoint, it's all about having that remote first or work from anywhere culture, hybrid culture that we're probably moving into. And that is, the core tenet of that is trust and accountability. If you don't trust your people, if you don't trust your teams, if you don't give proper direction, give proper goals, set proper expectations, and then trust the teams, the people, the experts you've hired to do the work to make it happen, then it's going to fail. The whole kind of idea of micromanagement just, it goes out the window when you're remote and distributed. It's all about, self-managed teams, which kind of moves to the process prong, where if you weren't working in an agile way before, as Richard said, it's going to call that out instantly when you move to remote and distributed, where you have to be working, you have to be able to visualize your work, whether it's on a Kanban board, in a tool. You have to be able to see your work in progress. You have to have that whole concept of self-managed teams, because there's really, for the most part, nobody there to manage them. That whole concept of becoming a T-shaped team member, where you have to take on more responsibilities other than your specific discipline, especially when you're distributed over multiple time zones, where you don't want to have to wait for somebody who's 7 hours ahead of you to wake up in the morning to get the answer you need. You need to be able to answer that yourself, even if it's outside of your discipline. And then, of course, the third prong from a tools perspective, you've got to have a modern, flexible, cloud-based tool that the teams don't have to adapt to, but rather, the tool can adapt to the way the teams choose to work. And as I'm going to show you in a bit later, I think Favro is a perfect example of a tool that makes that possible.
Okay. Thank you, Jon.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings me to the next question. How can we empower self-managed teams and promote flexibility? I would like to address this question to Patric first. Patric, if you could please share your insight on this. Like, how do we really empower self-managed teams and promote flexibility?
Yeah, I think you should be able to see me a little bit better now, right?
Yes, we do.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Jon, can you give a thumbs up? All right, cool.
Much better.
Well, it goes a little back to what Jon said there on kind of autonomy. There's one saying kind of in Agile is that alignment enables autonomy. I think that's a pretty good quote. That if the more, I guess it's a little bit the same way as when you talk about the kind of the circle of trust. But since many of us are quite used to this, you've probably all seen this this chart with we have autonomy, alignment, and we have autonomy in the other chart, and where if we're able, I mean, there's a lot of kind of fancy words for this, but I mean, basically, I think it breaks down to if we're able to align the teams, towards our common goals, then there's basically no limit to how far we can go with autonomy. That is really what kind of sets the bar for it. And I think one of the challenges in the Agile community is very often we start in the other end, which is natural because Agile it's been very much a bottom-up movement where we can very much start in the end of autonomy, and but there is an issue with this is why a lot of kind of Agile transformation initiatives fail, because you work so hard on making sure that these teams are set up in a way that they can operate autonomously, and maybe the ones doing this transformation have even done a pretty good job at it. But then if we fail with alignment, it's not going to take very long until this whole initiative loses trust with senior management. They're going to be like, well, it's great that people think this, Agile stuff is great, but, no one is going the direction we want. And everyone's just, running around. So we don't believe in this anymore. It's a very, very good way to lose that kind of trust. So it's extremely important, to really work with, with alignment piece. And I mean, I'm obviously blowing our own trumpet here now with tools, but I think that one of the kind of forgotten things is that tools is probably the strongest factor in what's called organizational gravity. Often when we talk about organizational gravity in Agile, we talk about, for example, incentive systems and reports. I think incentive systems is a great example that if you are giving, let's say, a team a larger responsibility for, let's say, a customer lifecycle. So let's say that you organize now more around kind of certain customer groups. They have more, let's say, a whole responsibility, from kind of customer acquisition to customer health, customer expansion. So, this is a pretty typical thing in, let's say, enterprise sales. So many of PMI's members are actually companies where, if we look at how they do B2B sales, this is where many of those organizations have been moving. It's kind of funny, one of our clients is SAP, and Fiverr is used by SAP in development teams, but we also have teams in parts of the world that are actually using this and how they work with their clients, which I think is very interesting. So even the best and strongest in the world around software sales, B2B, they are moving in this direction. And then this classic conversation is that, well, if you then have extremely, let's say, individual incentive systems that aren't based on the results of the team, that will create an organizational gravity kind of pulling you back to the old. So it's very hard to succeed with this transformation. And that's a very good example, and that's very true. It's just that very often IT or and the kind of planning tools you're using is seen as, that's just an IT question. The strategic significance of this is often forgotten or not understood by the CEO or by the head of IT. And I mean, to be honest, this is kind of why we created Favre in the first place, because what we saw was that, I built another company before called Handsoft, who is also a member of Swedsoft, but we and PMI and well, we worked a little bit with PMI there too. So Swedsoft, PMI, it was a lot of organizations that are very much around promoting software development that we collaborated with, and everyone was like having the same problems, right? So and I remember, I just have to throw in a little bit of thing there. I remember I was a speaker at as a physical PMI conference. And this is before we did things this way, and I want to come with a positive feedback. This is many years ago. This is more than 10 years ago, and I was so enthusiastic, and I got in there. I'd just been giving a speech at the Scrum conference, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great!" And now I'm going to meet with the ones that's been around here for a while, because the average age was a little bit higher in this room. And it totally bombed. Everyone was like, thought I was some Agile. I wasn't trying to be Agile Jesus. I thought it was very concrete, and it was like it was not a success at all. And no one thought. Basically, people thought that what I was talking about was not that great, and almost saw it as like a threat. And what and this is back with the previous company. And what I've seen now with Favro is that it's been a massive change. I think we've been going from, the kind of early adopters to that. Now this is a given. Now the conversation is that how do we get good at Agile? And when I've been doing anything, with the PMI chapter, the more recent years, it's been a totally different tone. And that is really, really good. It says a lot about how the market has changed the last 10 years. And when we then, going back here to this question, when we then talk about what does it mean to be good at it, it is really all that kind of old Mary Poppins quote, which is, it's not about doing Agile, it's about being Agile. And then, that kind of whole, ability to create that alignment is key. And just to kind of close this kind of thing, hopefully you've seen I've been going a little bit like a full circle here, which is that, tools is just such a strong contributor to organizational gravity. So you can do everything right. You get the right culture, you set your good OKRs, you have done, the teams have a good understanding of good processes, but then it kind of fails in the end anyways, because you have tools kind of pulling you back into, say, a very centralized way of working. So yeah, this was one of the reasons we created Favro in the first place. So they're obviously blowing my own trumpet, but with Favro or not, the tool question needs to be treated as a strategic one.
Thanks, Patrick. That was very helpful. So Richard, would like to learn a little bit from you about how you see it. Like how do we, or how can we empower self-managed teams and promote flexibility?
First of all, thank you, Patrick, for giving me a new vocabulary, organizational gravity. I love that word. I'm going to use that. So my thought about this, I'm thinking about giving teams a clear mandate and help them to frame their mission and focus on servant leadership as a leader outside of the team or as a scrum master. Be a servant leader, serve the team, clear the path so that they can do what they do the best. I think that's what I do as a day-to-day manager at FRA as well, just creating the best possible environment for my team to perform. So I think that's the number one for me. And so also give them the best possible coaching. If you're a decent coach yourself, or bring in an agile coach if that's needed. But also, as Patrick says, the tools, it's so super important. If you don't have the right tools to support team, the agile ways of working, it will fail. Sure, you can do your physical Kanban boards and stuff like that, but it seems that we have passed that type of work. If you're a distributed global company or just a company trying to do day-to-day job during COVID-19, you need to be digital and you need to have that right tools. So it's back to that. Also, I'm thinking about encourage team members to try out new ways. Also, that failing is okay. It's a great opportunity to learn. And as a leader, again, if you're a leader outside the team, communicate in terms of vision and ambitions. And let the team own their own backlog and promote that they pull their work as they find their WIP limit. Don't be there as a manager or a leader outside and try to push in stuff. That's the old ways of working. So let's help and empower self-managed teams to do this and find their WIP limits. There to just, back and show that they are in charge, but that you are there if they need support. So that's kind of my thoughts about this.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you very much. That's very interesting because I'm trying to connect the dots as I'm listening to all these amazing frameworks that we're talking about and ways of working. So sort of like systems thinking, connecting the processes and areas like that. So I'll ask some follow-up questions because I've got some interesting thoughts at the back of my mind. And I'm also waiting for some more questions from the audience so that we can see how we can really fit in those questions.
Imran, can I just throw in a quick comment to what Richard said? Is that okay? So I like what Richard said around failing. We have one of our kind of values at Favro in our own team is that we say failing without learning is just failing. Winning without learning is just winning once. So it's just that kind of whole mindset. And one of the things that the second comment I just want to make on that is that sometimes I feel I've seen in some agile transformations where companies are trying to work with this, and there's a lot of friction actually around kind of teams and management around this, where there is something going wrong, and management gets upset about this, and the teams are like, well, weren't I supposed to be able to fail, and you end up in this kind of battle. I think what's I talked in the beginning here about getting certain kind of cultures in, and I think what you also want to do is you want to have a culture of thinking strategically around failure, where, and not only from a management point of view, but teams always think around, how do we maximize the potential upside of this thing we're doing now, and how do we limit, the downside? How do we limit, the blast radius, we often call it. So, and some of that can be done with certain, tools. And now I'm not talking about Favre. I'm talking more kind of from an infrastructure point of view, when you roll things out. And some of it is just, how people think strategically about it. So, the difference between a team who does not think strategically about this and they just run, versus a team who actually consistently, make this kind of, let's say, they take calculated risks, so to say, and very systematic in their learnings. The difference between those two teams are massive in success. But it's really just how they think. It can be exactly the same team. So just getting that kind of culture, it makes a huge difference to success. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. So Jon, what's your idea on this? Like, how can we empower self-managed teams and promote flexibility?
Well, I also want to go back to something that Richard said, which I love, and can sometimes rub people the wrong way, especially when you're first coming into the organization, especially as an outside coach. This whole concept of servant leadership. You come into a large Fortune 500 company, so to say, here in the US, and you start talking about servant leadership, and they think, I've worked 30 years to climb this corporate ladder. I'm not serving anybody. But honestly, when people ask me, we hear a lot of buzz around self-managed teams. What exactly is a self-managed team, and how do you achieve a self-managed team? The answer that again can kind of rub higher ups in an organization the wrong way is, and the example that I love to give is, take kids on a playground, for example, at school at recess, right? And you give them a game to play and set the general rules or whatever it is. And let them go. They're going to manage themselves. They're going to figure it out. They're going to make it happen, right? But as soon as a teacher comes into the mix, or some authority figure who is trying to dictate the way they play the game, then they're no longer managing themselves. It's human nature to immediately default to the authority figure in the room, or in an agile team, the perceived authority figure on the team. So that's why, if you want a team to truly become self-managed, you have to kind of remove this concept of a boss or somebody higher up in the organization as part of the team. The servant leader's job is to simply pass along the intent. What is it we're trying to achieve? What's the goal? And then get out of the way. Let the team do what they do best, as Richard said. The other kind of point that I'd like to make here too, and I think this is an important one, especially talking with people from PMI, is I've worked with a lot of project managers, hardcore PMI project managers, PMPs, who are transitioning to Scrum Masters, transitioning to Agile coaches. And it's a very different mindset, right? Which I'm sure Richard acknowledges, right? And other people in this call acknowledge, a very different mindset going from a project manager to a Scrum Master, to a servant leader, to a coach. I mean, the project manager's main goal is to be responsible for delivering on time and on budget, right? Where it's a huge mindset change to remove yourself from that responsibility and say, it's no longer my responsibility as a coach or a scrum master. It's the team's responsibility. And that might be a small distinction, but it's a huge distinction as far as actually achieving this whole concept of a self-managed team.
Thank you, Jon. Wow, that was very insightful. So I'd love to know from you, like how can we shift from waterfall to agile from a tools perspective? Jon.
It's kind of our specialty, right, Patrick? So I'm going to be showing a specific example of how easy it can be with a tool like Favro to specifically move from a very agile, a very waterfall kind of Gantt type way of working, and smoothly transition from that more phase gate, very task-based way of working to a more iterative and incremental flow-based way of working. So if you have a tool, not to call out any specific tool, but I am. If you have a tool kind of like Jira, which was originally a ticket-based, we assign work to people, very command and control type mindset tool that's very centrally managed. When you talk about tools and organizational gravity, Jira is probably the biggest offender in my mind. I'm not afraid to say it, right, because I see it all the time. If you're reliant on a tool like Jira to do your agile transformation, it's going to be painful. And I think in a lot of ways, I honestly believe in a lot of ways, a tool like Jira, where you have separate projects still, and you have to be a member of that project to even see the team board, right? It goes beyond the existing organizational silos that already exist and creates technology silos. It creates tool-based silos. So you're not actually removing silos, you're adding even more silos. And you have to have a tool that breaks through those silos. And as you're going to see when I actually show Favro is all about transparency, not just for the team members of what they're working on, but teams of teams. And not just teams of teams, but the entire organization. I mean, you can literally see what the entire organization is working on and have flexibility to what we like to call, Patrick's actually kind of coined the term of collaborative planning. And being able to do that, it necessitates a tool that allows you to see not only what your team is working on, but what other teams that you need to collaborate with are working on, especially when you're in this continuous release type environment. All parts of the organization have to work together to get things out the door.
I just have to make a quick comment there. What Jon said. For everyone here listening in, stay tuned for when Jon will demo, because he will show this very much in practice. Just a quick note. I'm not going to go full bashing Jira here, but it's very true. What Jon says, and obviously him being part of many other transformations. He kind of sees this a lot firsthand. But if I can speak from kind of the vendor point of view, a lot of our customers are actually management teams using Favro in big organizations to kind of break those silos. And we also have a very strong Jira integration, both with Jira Cloud and with Jira on-prem. So we have a lot of cases where it might be that we have, let's say, IT or software teams, they're using Jira and they're not going to move away from that anytime soon. But then you just use this integration for Jira basically to communicate, with Favro and kind of like living more on, let's say, a portfolio level. And on that portfolio level, they want to break down silos between, product and marketing, operations. So, the management can work in that way. And then you might, in turn, then, connect with Favro being used in, let's say, marketing and so forth. So in this way, Favro becomes almost like a wrapper around Jira, both horizontally, with other teams that just would never touch something like Jira, like, for example, marketing, but also management who really have an initiative around breaking down organizational silos. So we do see, if I just look at our customer base, we see quite a lot of those kind of cases too. Hey, Imran, I see it was a really good question that came in the chat here from. It was a kind of a comment to what we talked about before. Do you want to bring that up?
Yeah. I was thinking of bringing that up. I just wanted to hear from Richard first briefly, so that we could all connect the dots and then take that question. So Richard, would you like to say something briefly, maybe? Like, how can we shift from Waterfall to Agile from a tools perspective?
Sure. Obviously, I'm not a tool vendor, so I don't have the experience as Jon and Patric. But from my point of view, finding the right tool that allows your organization and your team to support and explore their way of working. I think that's the main key. Not a tool that I think Patric is talking about, Jira. I haven't worked in Jira, but having a tool that really controls your way of working, I don't think that's the future. I think it's the opposite. You need a tool that supports your way of working and supports your team's need to explore and mature their way of working as well. I am thinking also about tools that's important that they can integrate seamlessly into your other tools. Like Favre, for instance, in PMI Sweden Chapter, we already have Google Workspace, and it's really neat to log in with the single sign-on. That's great, and also that there are great integrations. I think that's a key for the future as well. And again, to the team level, some might want to work with Scrum. Others want to start off with like Kanban or with Scrumban. And as FRA, where I work, we deliver everything from sites, technical facilities, and you need to think really how to support also a hybrid environment, and also that kind of tool setup, a tool that supports hybrid ways of working, from software with true agile ways of working to more traditional deliveries like housing and technical facilities and stuff like that, which I also think benefits from agile ways of working and agile tools. So that's my point of view.
Thank you, Richard. So we have got an interesting question from Nepasha. Thank you, Nepasha, for the question. So I would like to ask this question to the entire panel, whoever wants to take it. And we would request you to keep it brief. Otherwise, we might actually run out of time. So in your organizations, how are you rebuilding psychological safety in distributed, self-managed teams? That's the question. So whoever wants to answer first.
So if I understand this question right, it is a team which is self-managed and something has happened, meaning that they are no longer trusted, and now something has happened there, and now we need to rebuild that trust, and from a team point of view, rebuild that psychological safeties. Do you think I'm interpreting the question right there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because it says rebuilding, So I am, this can be a long thing or a short thing, and I keep it, short into what I think is the most important. Because in the end of the day, if you have, reasonable, if you have good, reasonably good management, in the end of the day, it's going to be about the results. There's just no way around that. And I wrote an article about a year ago called a bell curve approach to Agile. and I think that can be very helpful here. So whenever something has happened, a team has kind of failed, or it gets, let's say, new members or new put together team, there's basically a lot of kind of things that will pull a team, let's say, back in when it comes to team dynamics. There's a difference between a team which is, work together well, the high performing, versus a team which is kind of just put together, they're not, they haven't gelled, So a setback, even if this would be a team that it's the same team, but they had this, let's say, setback, that will bring them back in that kind of, psychological, maturity, so to say. And, in Agile, very often we say that when we prioritize our product backlog, we should start with the toughest things first. We should do hard things, high value things, first. And that is true. But this bell curve approach I'm suggesting is actually a little bit of an exception. What you do is that before you jump into those really tough ones, you actually do a couple of, let's say, easy things first. You want to get a couple of easy wins. And the reason you want to get those easy wins first is because that will help you, gel the team, build their confidence back up, so you have a better chance of success once you're then jumping into those, tougher things. Because if you're doing hard things and you have a setback, the team is in disarray, and you're going on something hard again, the risk that you will fail is pretty high, and then you will get into a point where this, the team just totally loses trust, and it might be, disbanded. So I would say, that kind of bell curve approach. Start with a couple of easy wins first before you get into the tough ones, as you also have something to show for you. I think that's a very good way to attack this.
Thank you very much, Patric. So Richard or Jon, would you like to share something regarding this question?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Just from personal experience, I think a great case in point are if teams working in Scrum, for example, have a retrospective. So if the retrospective is for the team, and if you, as soon as, I don't think it's a good practice to exclude people from meetings. I mean, I'm a big believer in transparency across the entire organization, but in my mind, the retrospective is an exception to that, or the retrospective is specifically for the team. And as soon as somebody who, again, is perceived as a manager or stakeholder, somebody who has superiority authority to other people in that room, it's no longer really a retrospective, an honest retrospective anymore in most organizations, because of that lack of psychological safety. And that typically comes down to the core thing to make all of this work, which is culture. I mean, if you still continue to have a lack of servant leadership, you have a very command and control culture inherently still, things like a retrospective no longer become a safe place as soon as your line manager is in the room. That can be different if you do have an organization that truly believes in these agile principles, right? And this idea of servant leadership. But again, the things like the retrospective, if you want to create psychological safety just from day one, then it should be just for the team. And the team should really feel comfortable maybe saying, well, one of the biggest problems was my manager. And that's difficult to say with the manager in the room, although it shouldn't be.
Thanks, Jon. Richard, would you like to share something?
Sure. I'm thinking about, this is a group of people. I'm not sure what happened, but it seems like, I don't know if you're familiar to the Fiverr model or the Whelan model, that we need to, back and start again from the beginning with dependency and inclusion, building up trust again, have some time with the team to let them share their thoughts and beliefs on what happened and how we can make the situation better, and then start from that, making small steps. And as Patric says, small wins. I think that's a great way to regain trust and regain some structure to the team to get back to that kind of flow of work and productivity further along the way. So yeah.
Thank you, Richard. So this was a very interesting conversation, and we can actually keep it going. Like, we're still taking questions from the audience, and we will try to answer them when we get a chance. But now is the time to see a demonstration by Jon on Favro. Like, how do we really use it to enable teams remotely in global projects? Jon, would you like to take us through the process and do a demo of Favro?
Love to. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see this now, everyone? Favro?
Yep, looks good.
Good.
Yes.
As soon as I share, I can no longer see you guys, so I have to hear you. Okay. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're going to talk about today, from just the topic of this particular webinar, this event, was how do you move from a more waterfall way of working, if that's what your organization was using pre-pandemic or even during the pandemic, to a more agile way, which you're just going to be more successful with moving forward in a work from anywhere type of world. So just quickly before I get into the main demonstration of the tool, I wanted to show how simple it is to even bring in an existing Gantt style type plan in the most hardcore type of waterfall world. So you can simply click this plus, say import, and you can directly import from any of these type of formats, right? So it's very easy to save a Microsoft project plan, for example, as a CSV, and then import it to maybe a timeline board like you're seeing this one. This is very task-based, right? Kind of, you can create almost a Gantt light in Favro that looks like this. We need to do this, and then we need to do this, and visualize that on a timeline, in a timeline view. And so once the next step there maybe is you can create a backlog, right? So you start working in a more agile way. You have a backlog, and maybe you have an ad campaign where these specific deliverables are necessary to deliver that overall ad campaign. So you're a marketing team. So if I switch this, which you can easily do in Favro, to a Sheets view, there's also a Kanban view of those exact same cards. I can quickly select all of these imported items and drag and drop them into, I can either add or move. In this case, I'm adding them. So it's the exact same cards. They now exist in two different places. And as you can see here in a Favro backlog, you have the ability to create hierarchy. So that whole concept of breaking big things down into smaller, more manageable things, something that can be completed in an iteration. Epics down into user stories. For a marketing team, it might be campaigns broken down into the deliverables for those campaigns. And then from there, when it's actually time to do the work, maybe this team, this marketing team, is moving to a more agile way of working. They can then take these pieces of value and commit those to maybe their sprint board like this. And as they start to work on these items, moving them from left to right, thanks to Favro Relations, which you see here in this column in the backlog. Again, since the cards can exist in multiple places at the same time, you're able to use the backlog as a way to track all of your work, maybe even across, maybe it's a product backlog being worked on by multiple Scrum teams. You're able to see, okay, which team currently is working on it, and what's the status of that work in the current sprint. I can see this one's in progress, this one's done, this one hasn't started yet, for example. So that's how easy it can be, literally, to go from a Microsoft project plan to moving to a much more agile backlog, sprint, iterative, and incremental way of working in Favro. So to kind of expand upon that, I want to show you just a quick run through of a development team. So here is, just before I proceed, just from a UI UX perspective, I want to call out that over here on the left, these are what are called in Favro collections. So similar to a tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams, where you might have channels over on this left-hand pane, Favro has what are called collections, but it's the same type of concept. This is maybe a team-based collection. You might have what's called a dashboard collection, which I'm going to show you in a minute, which is an aggregation of boards and backlogs from multiple teams, because you can have boards and backlogs exist just like the cards in multiple places. The boards and backlogs can exist in multiple collections. They can also be used for external. So if you want to work with external teams, there's functionality built into Favro to work with externals and bring them closer to your internal teams. So the collections are really just a view as to, for this team, for example, what is it they need to get their job done? And they get to manage this themselves. They can create this collection themselves. They can create the boards themselves. They can create their own flow. They don't have to contact IT to help with this. They do everything themselves. They can create their workflow rules and restrictions, automations, integrations. Everything can be truly self-managed by the team. So we're a development team working in a Kanban flow-based way, maybe a bit of Scrumban. And you can see they're moving their work from left to right like this. If something moves into blocked, it can automatically tag it as blocked and turn the card red via automations. Lots of functionality built in here, but there's lots of different tools on the market that are cards on a board, right? There's no shortage of them. The difference is, and one of the primary differences in Favro, and if I scroll down here, is the ability to have multiple boards and backlogs in a single screen collection. So say, as is common in modern development, you have to be working with multiple teams at the same time on the same cards, on the same value, on the same backlog items. So say we brought in from a DevOps team collection, we brought in their DevOps team Kanban board. So say this particular user story login and verification moves to in review, QA review. Maybe now it needs to move to a DevOps board for integration, for automated testing. We can simply take that same card, drag and drop it. You could even have this happen automatically via automations once it reaches this stage, down to this board. And now we have the same card in multiple places. And again, thanks to relations, I can see from a product development standpoint, this is currently selected on the DevOps team board. And from a DevOps perspective, they can see that from a product development perspective, it's currently a QA review. As this moves through their flow, maybe from automated testing through to integration, the development team can see that. They can see it live. They can see, okay, DevOps have currently have this at integration. And again, you're able to see the same thing here from the DevOps perspective, everywhere this card exists, thanks to these relations. So it's really multiple teams working on the same value, which is common at the same time. There might be marketing. Marketing might also need to work, prepare, a press release or prepare some advertising for this new bit of functionality, this new feature. So this card could then be shared or added to a marketing team's board to do what they need to do for this particular piece of value. Even maybe breaking it down into, these are the dev tasks, these are the DevOps tasks, these are the marketing tasks directly on the card itself. Now, most teams, most Agile teams at some point advance to the concept of a backlog. If I hit the B hotkey here or click this button up here to bring up the left pane, you can see that you can have backlogs either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. I typically like to think of them on the left-hand side. And here, if you have a new feature, I'll just quickly show you how to add something to the backlog in line like this. Something like this. Maybe this is flagged as very high priority. You give it a size. You can see those sizes roll up through the hierarchy here to maybe the epic level, all the way up to the theme level or the product level. And say the team is now ready to work on this new feature. They simply drag and drop it from their backlog to their actual board. So the backlog being the what, the board being the how. And as this progresses through from left to right, again, you can see directly in the backlog the progress of all of the features, not just that feature, but all of the features here, thanks to these relations. So another reason why people will choose Favro specific specifically for large organizations where scaling is necessary. You need to scale past a single team. You're at teams of teams all the way up to the program and the portfolio level. Favro totally supports that, again, thanks to the ability to have the boards and backlogs in multiple places. So if I switch to this leadership dashboard, you can see here they have a portfolio backlog, and they've got this broken down into, instead of themes and user stories, this is broken down into maybe strategy epics and maybe business epics flagged as opportunities, enablers, marketplace changes. So we're working at a very strategic business initiative level of the organization, what's going to drive this business forward. And you can see over here on the left-hand pane, those business initiatives out of that portfolio backlog are flowing through a portfolio Kanban. So say over here, and this can of course be viewed in multiple ways. So as you can view it as a Kanban, you can view it as a sheet if you prefer to see progress like this, which some team members might, or different departments might. And you can also, of course, visualize this as a timeline and manipulate those same business initiatives on a timeline view like this, changing start and end dates just by simply dragging and dropping. You can even switch the boards to burn down charts to see progress over time for all of these items, the cumulative flow charts built directly into the boards. And you're getting all those flow-based metrics, for example, like that CFD for free as soon as you start using these boards. But we've also added to this leadership dashboard recruitment backlog, which maybe primarily lives in a talent or an HR team's collection, but we've added it here to this leadership dashboard. And so they might have something like a chief marketing officer, and that's been pulled into, this is something we need to recruit for. We're going to select it. You know, we're going to do the analysis. What's the budget? How much do we want to pay for this position? Kind of an ideal candidate breakdown. Again, put that directly on the card. When that moves to implement, right, you can see that it flags it automatically as ready to start. And since this same backlog also lives in the talent team collection, I can just click this and go directly to their collection. They can see that, oh, okay, we've gotten the green light to actually go ahead and start recruiting for this chief marketing officer position. And what you can do here is you can break down this card, which now lives, you know, on that portfolio Kanban and also in this backlog. You can break this down to its own board, recruit chief marketing officer, right? And this becomes the recruitment flow. So I'm not going to type out the whole thing, but it would be something like you see below. Select resumes, interviews, so on and so forth. And as you can see here, this one that I've already broken down, recruit 2 software engineers, and that recruitment flow, which is tied back to the cards here in the backlog. You can then maybe, as resumes are coming in, you can maybe pull it and create a card for each potential candidate, put their resume directly on the card, grab their image from LinkedIn, put that on the card so it makes it even better to visualize this candidate flow, and be moving these candidates, pulling these candidates from left to right through the actual recruitment flow and visualizing that recruitment flow just as you would be doing in product development. So this gets across the point too that Favro's for the entire organization. It's true business agility. It's the entire organization collaborating and working in agile ways. So say this Matilda, for example, she makes it through the background check. She's passed all the interviews. We've made Matilda an offer and she accepts that offer. She gets pulled into hired. And you can see here that through an automation, it automatically added her to an onboarding flow. And so now this card again exists in multiple places too. Once she's been hired, she's ready for onboarding. You can get her equipment and logins ready. Maybe it's the first day, she's doing paperwork. And from up here, we can see, again, thanks to this amazing ability of the cards in multiple places at the same time, we can see that from an onboarding perspective, she's currently working on paperwork. And from a recruitment standpoint, of course, you can see down here that she's been hired. So from a working with external standpoint, say as a lot of organizations do, they're working with a recruitment and external recruitment agency. What they could do for this chief marketing officer position is they could take this board and simply say more, add or move to, and we want to put this, we want to add this to maybe that talent team's collection. And so now this team is an external team, which is going to be full of what are called external members and maybe even guest members. So they don't have the exact same privileges, the exact same rights and visibility as people internal to the organization, but they're working in the same tool to the point where their boards are visible not only to them, but also to the internal teams live in real time at the same exact time. So hopefully that gives you a pretty clear indication of the power and the flexibility of Favro and how it can truly break through those silos and promote self-managed teams, and furthermore kind of create that idea of true business agility, where we're all in this together, we're all working in tandem and break through those organizational silos.
Thank you, Jon, for this amazing demonstration. So I can see that the way it was designed and visualized during the designing process, thanks to Patric and the team of Favro, like it was done so well. I remember trying it out the very first time, maybe 7 or 8 months ago, while working, of course, with PMI Sweden as a part of it. So I could actually play around and discover a lot of things myself. So it was very handy. So like we actually want things like this, right? So this was amazing. So I have a quick question about one of the features. I don't know if you have already covered that. So if I am making a card and if I share it with somebody, make somebody the owner, can that person make other owners? Like how does the ownership and the removal of ownership work? Like is it built around the fact that, okay, I can be the owner of this project for some time, and even if I cannot undo this process, my co-founder or my partner is going to do that for me and take over that card himself or herself without me saying it.
I'll show you just how simple that is. Let me see here. There we go. So we have this collection, for example, and if I go to manage members and say there would typically be, this would typically be an organization-wide collection, for example, but maybe it's a private collection and Patric is also a member. So if I no longer wanted to be the owner, I wanted to make Patric the owner, I could simply make him the owner, and I'd have the ability to remove myself or change myself to a member just that quickly. So when we talk about, it's the exact opposite of a centrally managed tool that has to be run by IT. That's an excellent example of being able to do things like changing ownership of a collection or a project instantly on the fly yourself.
Okay. That's really great. Thank you, Jon. So I think we have a question here from Bjorn. Thank you, Bjorn, for the question. So the question is Favro for small, mid, or large-sized companies? Limitations of number of users, if there is any.
Yeah, maybe I can answer that. And I think it's a pretty good segue into the next section, which is I will show you what is coming here within the near future with Favro. Imran, can I use this as a segue?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
All right, good. So then I take the opportunity to also share my screen here. So if you need to enable me to be able to do screen sharing.
Okay. Let me, there you go.
So, all right. Good. Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna actually scroll down here to just some boasting around. we are getting a lot of good kind of praise. And the question then is why and who is it from? So to answer Bjorn's question here, there's many companies that are quite small using Favro from around the world. There are many enterprises using Favro. Everything from large companies in game development. Disney. I mentioned SAP before. PwC using it. Massive agile transformation. So there's a lot of enterprises. But I would say the largest group of customers are kind of like very fast growing venture capital backed companies. So a lot of the if you look at in Sweden, we have a really cool company called Inride, which is making these autonomous trucks competing with Tesla. There's been beginning a lot of media recently. That's a really cool company. Neo4j, which is a graph database company. So there's a lot of these kind of venture-backed, fast-growing companies. Typically, they're being software as a service companies. They are I would say the fast-growing customer base. And I think the reason is that when you run a software as a service company, the thing we've been talking about today, where how marketing and product and operations and everything else needs to be in tandem. The collaboration between these, is so important, because otherwise you're simply too slow. And Favro is just the #1 tool for that. So I think that's the reason. Now, when it comes to bigger, if you look at most enterprises today, they're more and more moving towards software as a service business models. One good example is that we got Volvo Car Mobility as a client, and that's basically cars becoming a service. So I think a lot of the big enterprises are looking at things like Favro, for that reason. And Favro is the only startup, because we're a relatively new company. We started in 2016, and we're the only startup in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for enterprise agile planning. All the other players in that Magic Quadrant are kind of big old players. We're the only kind of upcoming one. I should say though that we're not entirely new to this industry. Before this, we built Handsoft, so we've been working for a very long time with scaling agility from a tool point of view, but that was an on-prem tool. So that's basically what kind of the typical customer is using us. And I think there was a follow-up question. There was something about pricing model too, right? Imran, can you repeat that one?
So, yeah, we got the question about the limitations of number of users.
Yeah, so there's no limitation there. The largest customers have thousands of users. Favro has kind of enterprise grade scalability, security, data governance. Obviously, with some of these bigger customers, we are also going into process with them where they do, let's say, a bigger security assessment, and they're doing a couple of assessment in connection with their GDPR compliance. So the kind of enterprise needs for that. You can imagine having a client like Disney. They don't buy tool like anything. So this when there's a bit of a process where if you're an enterprise buyer, we're pretty used to that. So we just closed a deal now with a big healthcare company from the US, and obviously they are very compliance heavy kind of company. So there it was a bigger process for us to go through, and we passed it, and they're now a client. So we're pretty used to those situations if you're asking it from a very, let's say, enterprise point of view.
And Patrick, Gregor specifically asked, what's the licensing model?
Yeah, so I'm actually on Favro's website here now, so I can just scroll up to that. So if we just click here on pricing, basically, it starts from, you can choose, 2 users, 5 users, we have it kind of like up in buckets up until you get to 100 users. And then we basically make, a deal with you, based on, how many you need. And we have the most common model, I would say, quite, I think about 60% are on the standard plan. Actually, not so many on light. It's kind of a little bit of a, let's say, a step-in plan. And then, most of the enterprises are typically on the enterprise plan because they want to do those. So in terms of seats, this is actually more than 50% of our seats with enterprise model. But in terms of our customers, most of them are on the standard plan. And you can try for free for 14 days. Did I answer all of those questions there now?
Yes, it looks
okay,
like.
Cool. So let me then just jump over here to what is coming next. In essence, and this also ties in a little bit to the who's buying Favro. In essence, there's really 4 things around Favro. One, it can handle the unique complexities of each team in a collaborative planning way, as Jon has been showing. Favro brings a collaborative planning between teams. Favro brings collaborative planning between teams and the management. So the planning and the collaboration goes not only top down but also bottom up. So it becomes a more collaborative way of working together. And then finally, collaborative planning with external parties. So today it's very common with external development and having various organizations, which is actually outside the organization being part of it. And the point here is to make that more of an extension of your team rather than throwing kind of work over the wall. So these are the kind of the 4 areas where Favro excels, where normally a company would have to pick between, let's say, very specific tools for each and every team, and then you end up kind of very siloed in that way, as Jon described. Or if you have enterprise needs, you will go with one of the kind of enterprise plays like Atlassian with Jira or any of the others, because you need that kind of enterprise grade security and scalability and all of those things. But then you end up with a problem of that centralization. So Favro is really around getting both that kind of autonomy for the teams, but where the alignment is created through collaborative planning instead of centralization. I like to say it, if Favro helps you, if you're a manager, Favro helps you become a facilitator rather than a dictator. So that's kind of the sweet spot. So everything we do is trying to make this stronger. That's what we optimize for, and hopefully you will see that in I'm going to show you basically 4 things now. The first thing before I show those 4 things is just what we just released, which was automation. So I'm going to go back here. Jon talked a bit about this, so I'm not going to demo it or anything, but I would just stress how extremely powerful automation is, because automation is something that very often happen in a very centralized way, and Favro is the only tool where the teams themselves can automate their work. So they are empowered to automate their work and free up basically resources. So this has been a massive hit. So thanks everyone who's been sending us tons of feedback around this. We thought ourselves that this was a very good idea. We had listened to customers, but this is probably one of the features we've done that has been giving us the most kind of people simply just randomly reaching out to us saying that this was awesome. So that's really cool. So hopefully we get a lot of positive feedback on the next things as well. But what I want to show you here, which is the first thing we're releasing here in a week or 2, is that today we have a help center, and here I have the help part for automation. So you can see various videos for exactly how to set this up for kind of various situations. But we will launch something now that we call Fiverr Academy, because the whole point with Fiverr is that it's very fast and easy to learn. And once you know that, you have infinite opportunities for supporting kind of any kind of advanced, complex situation. And just to help people with ideas and practices around that, we have created quite a lot of content, various specialized webinars, articles. So everything from kind of super concrete things, how you set up a specific automation, to kind of more, let's say, strategic things. So, some of the things that Jon have been talking about today. What we're doing now is that we're putting all that into something called Fiverr Academy to make it easier for you to navigate and learn. So Fiverr can also be a bit of a kind of a learning platform for you. One of the things we noticed that people like certifications. So we also have 2 certifications you can do online. And now I am on Jon's website. He's the one hosting this. So we got the Fiverr Agile Fundamentals. You can get this, or you can get Fiverr Agile Advanced. And there's a cost for these courses, but we are quite generous with vouchers for people that are customers. So if you become a Fiverr customer, I mean, just reach out to us, say that I promised it in this webinar, and we will give you a voucher for you and your team, and you can do these certifications. And this is, obviously they use Fiverr as an example, but as you can see, these are very much also about, Fiverr is like the example we're using here, but these are also more general kind of, learning Agile and advanced Agile. Now, going into the features here. So I'm going to show you 3 things, and I'm doing it straight out of Fiverr here. So the first thing which is coming here in the coming weeks is something we call collection folders. I'm going to show you that. So as you can see here on your left-hand side, we have something new, which is that we can actually put these collections into folders like this. And this might not matter so much day 1 when you start using Fiverr, but one of the things that tends to happen if you're running Fiverr in a big organization is that more and more people start using it. If you are in a manager or an executive position, you probably have access to many of these collections. So it simply is going to become quite a lot of collections after a while. So in this way, you will be able to start organizing them into what we call collection folders like this. So pretty straightforward, being able to put them into folders, getting even a very large organization structured. And I would say that we have customers, with thousands of users, and they've been able to run Fiverr in a very good way, even without this. But I can tell you that this is going to make it even easier to scale from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 users, and still feel like it doesn't become too messy. So that's collection folders. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to show you here is something called, we simply call it shareable links. And Jon showed you a little bit already today how you can set permissions on on the collection. So how do you can have guests on the collection if they are, let's say, external. We even have something called external members. So there's a couple of things you can do here to basically set the rights on a collection. And one of the things that we notice that people really like to do is to also use these collections as almost like a report or a dashboard to get people involved. We have something in Favro which is called public collection. We have some cool examples. For example, we actually have several game studios using Favro, and they basically put their feature and content roadmap in a collection which is public, and so anyone can see online who's using that. So we got a feedback from some customers that are in very big organizations. For some reason, in particular in American big organizations. And I mentioned before, it's quite common that people use Favro in kind of on, let's say, management, an executive level, almost like more of a kind of a portfolio tool. And it might be, let's say, enterprise-wide initiatives where, maybe there's a group, globally together, working distributed, they're working on some specific initiative or project across the organization. Many of them might be quite senior. And if they're quite senior, it's not a very unusual situation that they then want to show, this board or this collection to senior executives, or even to the CEO. You want to say, hey, this is our roadmap. This is where we are with our roadmap, or something similar. And one concern then is, of course, they're like, well, we want to show this to them, but we maybe they are not already maybe they don't have a Fiverr account, and maybe they're a little bit afraid that what happens if someone sends a link which is going to be outside the organization. Suddenly, we're showing the secret roadmap to someone who's not working in this enterprise. Now that wouldn't be great. I'm going to get fired. So to solve this need, we have created a functionality now where you can share both boards and collections in a more advanced way here, as you will see. So what you can do here now, as you can see, is that you can have it quite restricted. So it's just the members of this collection. It can be anyone with a link. So this is very similar to what you can do with a Google Doc. But the link is secret and not searchable. So as anyone who works in an enterprise will say, okay, this is probably not something IT will like in your organization, even though it's secret and not searchable. This is typically something you see smaller companies do a lot and are fine with. But within bigger enterprises, IT policy will tell you that, okay, this is not allowed. So therefore, we have the thing here in the middle, which is called My Company. So here we have built in a little bit of a security step. So you have to authenticate here. So you need to have an email address. You basically need to be on the right domain. And you need to have that, an email address on that domain to be able to then access this. So there will be like authentication step in between there. And this is really powerful because this means that you can share this collection that might be a dashboard or a roadmap or something, with some executives, or maybe just in a broader group, or maybe with the whole company, and you can do it in a very secure way. So this is something that we got a lot of input on from especially people at enterprises who wants to do this. Okay, and the final thing I'm going to show you here now is this dependencies. Actually, I'm going to go back and show it from a different perspective first. I'm going to show this. So this is a interesting conversation because in one way, we don't like dependencies the way it's in a traditional Gantt schedule. If you do any Agile course, Scrum Master course, anything, you're going to learn a lot around how bad it is with these kind of, dependencies from like a task to another task, or from an objective to another objective, they're like pushing things forward, etc. Which is all true. And you learn in this Agile course that, you should take dependencies into account when you do your backlog prioritization. So if something is dependent on something else, that should, be part of the order. But, still people want, dependencies, because often we do have dependencies. So we've been putting a lot of thinking into how can we make dependencies in a way so you can highlight that there is a dependency relationship between two things in Favro. And it doesn't have to be within the same board. It can actually be across anywhere in the organization. And it will basically be some intelligence on that dependency, but without getting into that old-fashioned Gantt, Microsoft project Gantt schedule way of using dependencies, where everything just becomes a big kind of self-moving spaghetti. So that's what we're doing here. We've been taking a lot of inspiration from tools like, for example, Unity and Unreal Engine that are doing a lot of kind of dependency links between objects, but are working in let's say, in this more, let's say, fluid way. So now you will be able to have this between various objects like this, and you can turn on and turn off if you want to visualize them. And here you will see an example where it is on the same dependencies, but on a Kanban. So observe here that if you look at this is actually the same. So, as Jon showed you before, you can simply flip the board. Do I want to visualize this as a timeline? Okay, I'll there see the dependencies in this way. Or do you want to see the same thing now as a Kanban board? It's the same cards, it's the same data, the same dependencies, but just visualized in different ways. So you just flip it. I think a lot of people are going to be like, kind of, holy shit, when they see this. This is I haven't seen anyone do this properly. The closest I've seen this being done properly is as I said, not in planning tools at all. It's actually in tools like Unity and Unreal, where this is between various objects within those tools. So anyways, so that's it for some of the things coming. And we're not talking far away here now. We're talking weeks. Okay, just to give you an example, this is coming next week, and the other things are coming. The Fiverr Academy, I think, is next week, and the collection folders, I think, is next or the week after. And so this is very, very near future. So with that said, let's see if there's been some more questions coming in here. I see that there was some more things coming up here. Yeah,
So
maybe,
I think,
maybe we're done.
yeah, I think we have taken all the questions. But yeah, thank you for saying that, like that it is coming up very soon. I was about to ask that. So thanks to Patric, Richard, and Jon for your valuable time. And we at PMI Sweden are very big fans of Favro. We use it all the time. So Favro is the solution. So we will surely use the new things that we have learned today. And thanks to the audience members and my team in co-moderating this. And also we have another member who is Johanna Stranning. She was also helping from the background, setting up the PDU code. And thanks to the attendees, if you are certified PMP professionals, then you are going to be able to use the PDU code, which you will get from us by email in the next couple of days. So thanks to everyone and have a good night and stay safe.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.